So let's take a look at Paul. Paul was a Pharisee. Now, James the Just was not a Pharisee. He was of the line of Judah. Paul was a Pharisee of the line of Benjamin. There's a difference between these lines. And so he was a Pharisee under the line of Benjamin. A lot of people seem to say that Paul was trying to subvert Christianity. He was trying to paganize Christianity. And so he came in, he maybe the excuse here is that he saw that Christianity was gaining in popularity, so he saw an opportunity to paganize it. And let's just take a look at what happened to Paul. Because if he tried to do anything, he would have done exactly the opposite. Paul's first intention was to be more Jewish than the Pharisees. Paul's initial intention was to get rid of these Jewish people who went after this Messiah, Jesus Christ, or supposed Messiah. That was Paul's intention. It was not to throw away the law. Paul's intention as a Pharisee was to make people comply to the law. So that it's say that Paul came in to subvert Christianity by teaching people to paganize it, and he was first named Saul, and he had papers from the high priest to put Christians in prison, and now his conversion had to do with him trying to paganize Christianity. Well, he was a Roman citizen. He really wasn't a Pharisee. Paul was a Pharisee more than anybody else was a Pharisee. We can see it in his writings. Him being from Rome, trying to bring paganism into Christianity is ridiculous. Now, you can make that charge against Constantine since he was Roman, but not Paul. Paul had money, he had riches, he had no reason to subvert Christianity. And if he was going to try to subvert Christianity, was he going to try to change it to paganism? Or would it be more likely for him to do what James the Just was preaching, tell the Gentile believers to get in line and be more Jewish? If anything, if Paul really wanted to was afraid of Christianity growing in popularity, he would have compromised with it and at least made it more Jewish. He wouldn't have paganized it. This is the thinking of some people who supposedly have this animosity towards Paul and want to go back to Jewish Christianity because Paul preached that the old way had passed away. And this is what these Jews were clinging to. It said that there was a new covenant. The major thing is that the Jewish people were holding on to the old covenant. So when you say that Paul came along and changed Christianity, no. It wasn't that he changed Christianity. He defined exactly what Christianity was supposed to be, separate from Judaism. But all these Christians want to bring you back to Judaism. Right? Paul was a Pharisee. His name was Saul. So his intentions would not have been to bring Roman or Greek mythology or paganism to the Christian church. His intention would have been, since he had papers to arrest them, to bring them back under some sort of Judaism, as did James the Just. But Paul's message was separate from James the Just. Paul's message was different. This is why the Jews in Jerusalem had mobbed Paul, because James, or the elders of the church, which included James, had said to them, he was in Jerusalem, you see all these believers who are Jews, and they're all zealous for the law. And they've heard of you, Saul or Paul, who has told people in the synagogues, not just the Gentiles, he's told Jews to throw off Moses and circumcision. These Jews wanted to hold on to Moses, and Paul had an opposite message. And these Jews for Jesus and Messianic Jews are saying, no, we need to go back to the same Christianity that the early Jewish church did, and we have to go back to being Jewish. And so this is the argument. People are hating Paul because they want to go back to Judaism. But Judaism, religious Judaism, Moses pointed to the Messiah coming and taking away the law, to which everybody wants the law back. They want the yoke of the law. They want to throw the blood of Christ away to hold on to Moses. This is this is why God sent Paul. Paul lost everything he had. He had money, he had status, he had no reason to teach paganism. He had papers to go, he had power. And so for him to have a conversion experience falsely, and then to be thrown in jail, and to be hated by all the Jewish Christians all across Macedonia, Asia, all of Antioch and all these places, and all in the huge Alexandrian society that was out there, to actually throw off his duty, to come to them and not actually want to make them conform to Judaism when that's what they wanted to do. He would have had his status if he wanted it both by the Christians and the Jewish community. They were ready to welcome Christians, because they were worshiping along with Jews in Jerusalem. Christianity, it seemed, was accepted. As long as Christians were still Jewish, the Jews didn't have problems with it. A Christian Jew and a Jew who wasn't a Christian could go to the same synagogue. They still practiced the law. When no, it was separate now. So Paul would have had no reason, to convert to a Christianity that threw off the law and went to paganism again. He had no reason to do that. He could have enjoyed status from both points of view. He could have enjoyed status from the Jewish community and the Christian community by bringing them all together under Moses. But you see, Jesus is not like Moses. Jesus was the prophet to come that showed that the blood of his covenant is what changes the heart, and not following the law. This is what Judaism went back to. So when you think about Paul and how he supposedly subverted Christianity, no. Paul defined true Christianity. What was done on the cross was the removal of all law, so that we could follow by a new way, by a new and living way, by the love of Jesus Christ. This is why the ceremonial laws of Moses were gone, and all the laws that would have condemned man were taken away, so that now we can follow a new way. Not that we sin that grace abound, but that we actually can rejoice in Christ and practice holiness without the whip or yoke of the law on our back. It was totally a different concept, but it was the true concept. Many people want to run back to James, and by the way, that is the Christianity. James did preach the Christianity that these Jews for Jesus want. So it stands to reason that today James and Paul are still in opposition. God bless.